we're really pleased to have Alison Friedman with us because Alison is an old friend and someone who is doing just extraordinary things both in China and with Chinese outside of China. There are a lot of people around this table who've been involved in cultural exchanges for a long time. Michelle Vosper down there, who was just in this seat last Monday night doing a wonderful podcast on her book, which you should all buy, on women in the arts in Asia. Michelle's been doing this for a long time. I and my colleagues at the National Committee have been doing cultural exchanges for a long time. But the level to which Alison is bringing culture and cultural exchanges, also I should say Kathy Barbash, who's been doing a lot of cultural exchanges over the years, but what they're doing, not just presenting culture to another audience, but deeply involving the people that are watching or listening to the performances is really quite extraordinary. I had the opportunity to watch Alison in motion, and she's very energetic and always in motion, several years ago when she brought Tim Robbins and a company to China to do a series of Shakespeare plays. And sort of her physical presence and her wonderful ability to be bicultural and bilingual and elicit very interesting questions out of the audience after the performance was quite extraordinary. And I think you're in for a treat. Shakespeare is one thing to produce to an international audience. The kinds of play that Disgraced is quite another thing to do. So I'm going to step out of the way and turn it over to Alison, who's going to talk. We have the director of the play, Timothy Douglas, with us to my left, and then two of the performers, Fajer Al-Kaisi and Rachel Leslie, who were two of the actors who went with Alison. We'll let them, after Alison speaks, maybe introduce themselves for 1 minute or two, and if you want to say something about the impact that this trip had on you, or we can wait a little till we get more into the discussion. But Alison, it's all yours. And we are going to be able to watch part of this in a few moments as well. So.
Thank you so much. I'm losing my voice, so I apologize. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. It's incredibly amazing to be able to share this back here in the States, because what we just experienced together in China was a bit of a dream within a dream, so we're trying to bring it back here and share it with American audiences as well. My organization, Pong Productions, with a little nod to Jan and the National Committee and Ping Pong Diplomacy, our mission is bringing China and the world together through the performing arts. So we bring Chinese dance and theater out, international dance and theater in, and we use performances to talk about issues that are a little bit hard to attack head on. With Disgraced, this play came about, or this China tour of Disgraced came about a couple years ago when my colleague Guang Mengtong, who's sitting here, we were sitting around our production table in Beijing having a planning meeting about what our next project would be. And Mengtong said, I saw this play on Broadway a number of years ago. It ripped my heart out. It still sat with me. We need to bring this to China. So we ordered the script. I read it and I thought, what? Wait, what? And I had the great privilege of seeing Timothy's production at Arena Stage in Washington, D.C., and it does rip your guts out and doesn't leave you with any easy answers. It's so complex, it's so nuanced, it's so layered, and I thought, God, are we really going to do this?
Will we be able to do this?
Right, yeah, so many questions, exactly. And we did, and we've got about 20 minutes of a brief documentary of some footage to share, so I think we'll let that speak for itself. These guys have not seen it yet. No. This is still a work in progress, so you are the first audience to see it, the first public screening. And I think we'll do that, and then straight into a conversation about the details of it. A brief thing is we did make the decision to tour the play to education institutions, universities, high schools, cultural institutions, with the express purpose of having post-show talks after every performance, because there's so much to unpack. We wanted to be able to unpack it with the audience. And I'll stop talking.
It's called intelligence. Look, I'm sure it's not all that different from how you feel about Israel sometimes. Hey, Jensen? Really? You know how much easier things are for me since I changed my name? It's in the Quran. It says you can hide your religion if you have to. It's called Fajer. I'm not talking about the Quran. Just lay off with me and your folks. Let me get this straight. So, waiter is addicted to me in a restaurant. You want to make a painting, but if it's something that might actually affect my livelihood, you don't even want to believe there might be a problem? Sitting in my office, redlining a contract due at 6. Steven walks in with Jack, sits down, asks me where my parents were born. Pakistan. I said India. So first he's doing the Islamic tradition. It's an entirely new feat. That a young Western painter born on Islamic representation, not their monarchy. This is a paraphrase. You heard it. Made in the lack of irony. What about your Talking about wiping the sail into the Mediterranean. How do you feel then? Outraged, just like anybody else. Not everybody's outraged. A lot of folks like hearing that. But you like hearing that? I said a lot, but I asked if you like hearing it. You like hearing about Israel being wiped into the ocean? I said. No, I want to know. Sometimes, yes.
We are supposed to be celebrating.
I'm so saying it's wrong. And it comes from somewhere. And that somewhere is Islam. No shit, it's wrong, but it doesn't come from Islam, it comes from you.
Is number 4 middle school. Yeah, we're in Beijing, number 4 middle school. We're gonna tour the campus, go lunch at the canteen if I remember, do a couple of workshops in the afternoon, and talk to the students about acting. Yeah.
Long arts. You can't tell. There's too many people. And the ladies Friedman of army saying unto me, "Fear not. I'm the first and the last."
I'm Rachel.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
My name's Albert. Where's my from Malawi.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is Tim. He's the director.
大家好. That's all of my Chinese. I've exhausted it. Thank you for your kind response. I'm going to ask you to participate almost immediately. So again, my name is Tim, and I directed this version of Disgraced. Use the whole room. Use the whole room, so you can do this without hitting anybody.
Fill the space. Use it all.
Here we go, and count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. To the right. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. To the left. 2, 3, 4. Up. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Up. 2 to the right. 2 up. 2 to the left. 2 up. 2 and in the right. Up to the right. 1 down to the right. Very good. Very good.
Whether you're going on a job interview, or you're going to go speak with people, or you have to talk to your boss, or any number of scenarios in life, whether you're going to be an actor or in the theater or not. You're going to want to be able to clearly present who you are, what you're there to do, what your message is, and you have to be committed. Unless you can figure, do you know what to do?
Yeah.
You need to link up to an arm, but you have to pay attention, because if he comes up, boom, you're the mouse, right?
This kind of work is really special for us just because there's so many preconceptions about the East and the West, and so to come and sort of collapse a lot of those barriers. But really came to the forefront interacting with the kids.
It's clear that they've had an experience. That's the most important thing, that they have an experience. But you know, this is our first experience across cultural China, trying to conceptualize, capitalize something. And then there's the added thing of high schoolers, which is I don't get to work with often. So given all of those variables, I felt different. And this we just discovered ourselves as a team of teachers. So so I think we have a pretty good rapport, and we just got that. We didn't know that, so onwards and upwards. I'm excited.
This movement of young artists, when not blindly angles, they are asking a question: how to make art sacred again? It's impossibly heroic art exact for themselves, which is why I'm calling it impossible heroes. She doesn't like it. Can nobody really believe that? This is my book. You're in this room now, so that's it. And now we try to destroy my memory. You are fucking evil after everything I've done for you. I know what I saw. You have any idea how much of myself I put into that place? The problem is always like he liked those Islamic tradition paintings. But actually I think he put a lot of attention on animals. And in the end he said they call you people animals. So it seems like that he didn't like those Islamic tradition at all.
I think maybe because we are not brought up in that kind of society or environment, maybe we are not very familiar of this conflict between the chosen religions in the U.S. society. So maybe our performance may be a little shallow to some degree. So maybe you can give us some suggestions that to what point do we can we dig it deeper?
Actually, one of the things that is most compelling to me is how human each of the portrayals were, how true you were to yourself.
Thank you. I just want to share the name. I really like the name, Disgraced, and also the Chinese translation. It was fantastic. You see the Chinese character on the left is ear, on the right is stop. So in our ancient Chinese culture, when there's shameful, the character also means shame. So whenever there's shameful, disgraced stuff, we don't talk about it. We don't want to listen to it. But nowadays, more people are kind of like being open-minded and starting to talk about stuff. And at my family dinner, whenever there was like attack, like a terrorist attack in the States, my father will be, oh God, please, the killer don't be a Chinese. And my American husband, he's white, he's like, please don't be Muslim, please. America doesn't need another attack. Also, another attack with the Muslim people, because it's already labeled this race by a lot of unfair things. Also in China, I just want to share a message. If anyone in this room, our Chinese folks, if you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to smack some Korean cars, I'm going to smack a Japanese guy, please don't. Be kind to each other. And you guys have the power to bring the messages to more people. And thank you so much for the great show. Thank you.
So my question is, do you guys think we can actually escape our identity, like our national identity, our gender or social class, or like a big part of our life is defined as the instant that we're born?
One thing I noticed when I got married was that people treated me in a different way in my society once they realized that I was married versus when I was single. And I thought this was fascinating because I thought, oh, it wasn't such a big deal, things have changed so much, but I really started to notice the society that I grew up in and how that influenced my surroundings, how that influenced me in ways as well.
We were at Starbucks just drinking coffee. Marie starts talking to this barista who's on break. I can tell she's not into him. He's not getting the message. She starts asking about our goofy hats.
There are a lot of people on minorities who say, well, if they can have the best, why can't we? If they can reach the top, then why can't we? And a lot of that push is to say, well, I'm proud and I'm at the top. Right. So it's that I also have the right to be the best. And it's also chasing that.
In America, there's like, in the last couple of years especially, white people who have like just the privilege of that are now coming to grips with how much brutality and unfair treatment that people of color get from the police. And there are a lot of people who are like, I never believed that. I had no idea how, but because now they're capturing it on cell phones, there's a lot of people going, oh my God, I have been, because of the bubble I'm in and the privilege that I have, I was willfully blind to what's going on. So it's like someone then being faced with that naivete shattering, then you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You are changed now, and you can't pretend to not know what you know now. So you can't go back. You have to go forward. How do you want to go forward?
You know, just the process of assimilation. That, you know, I have friends. I have friends on both sides of the spectrum who completely try to pretend that they don't have anything to do with where they're, you know, they don't want an ounce of that, where they come from. And I have friends who completely embrace it. You know, so there is just there's a lot of give and take in terms of how much of this am I going to adopt, how much am I going to try to erase in order to assimilate, in order to survive.
Across the board, on all spectrums, people who are Republican or Democrat being offended enough to walk out, people who are conservative or liberal, people who are Muslim or Jewish, or the Muslims often, some of the Muslim artists that I've spoken to say this play is unfair, it paints the Muslim character as in an unfavorable way, it's not just that. They're missing the point that it's more nuanced and complicated.
Right now, the pendulum is extremely tight, and that's being gentle, on people from a Muslim background. It's quite frankly, I think it's persecution. But African Americans know what that is from not that long ago in history, and it still actually continues. It's extra tight on the Muslim people with Muslim backgrounds right now.
That the other stuff is still true, that you can still make something of yourself from nothing, that you can still find diversity, that you can still, you know, the American dream is an experiment, and it's still an experiment.
And I think that this is a problem in America. It's a huge problem. And hopefully, through plays like this and other things, we can wake up to try to do an autopsy or to talk about what these things really are. Because it's still, and yes, it's more for the Muslim people right now, but it's still huge. All of these things are very much, and I think that people do give up a sense of their identity to try and fit into something else because they're not allowed to be more than the idea, than the commercial, capitalist selling idea of what people are and how it makes sense.
Are you afraid that that's one thing might reconfirm some stereotype about the Islamic men?
Yes, but I know that as a Black American man, and I don't know where the line is. I'm so often responded to as a threat. I'm just walking down the street behind someone who doesn't notice that I'm there, and by the time they notice, and I was just walking down the street. So I have that sensitivity within myself, which is why I asked for the opinion of another, because I wanted to make sure that I was neither shortchanging the moment nor overplaying it. And I had no way of knowing because I don't know why people think I'm scary.
Even President Obama said that the government is a giant ship. It moves inches at a time. You can't do a huge, turn. You try, but then there's some pushback, and then you try again, and then push back, and then that's what's interesting about it. It's that in the DNA of it, there's this thing that is self-correcting, that you have the potential the freedom of the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of press. Right? All four of those together means we can do this play.
你确定我文化负责看看吗？
我只看你的上半部分。
是，这还有点关系。
The openness with which you bring yourself to the work meets the language, meets the passion, meets the hard work, and meets the audience, and the combination is basis and the essence of what great theater is. For me, and I think I may speak for my colleagues, all actors, I started as an actor, that all of you are a visceral reminder of why it is I do theater, why it is I love to act. And sometimes along my journey, I've been doing it for so many years, I never lose the commitment, I never lose the joy or the love, but sometimes I lose touch with that first spark, that first moment that I knew that I wanted to be an actor, I knew that I wanted to express myself in such a full and personal and hopefully transformative way. So I thank you for that this evening.
I'm so glad that I can have this opportunity to work with such professional actor from Broadway. I myself am the president of the drama club at my school, and I really learned a lot from the professionals, like those movements. We don't learn it at school, so it's kind of brand new. Like the Broadway way of doing drama is kind of different from the Chinese way of doing theater. So yeah, it's really interesting. Also tired, and it has a lot of physical movements and vocal practice.
What's always been interesting for me in my life is, and I'm sure you can relate on some level, but I have a different experience being from America, from a place where there are lots of different looking people. There's a difference between your personal identity and the identity that the world assumes for you. Different looking, different religions, different from all different parts of the world that are now living together, particularly in a place like New York City. It's been tough sometimes because lots of people like to tell you who you are and put you in a box. And, you know, that's one thing when you choose it as an actor. It's another thing from when you're little, before you even have a understanding of it, to have the world put that on you and put things on you.
The fact that this play can happen on Broadway and be nominated for a Tony says that even if there is a problem, we can still write a play about it, we can still watch it, and we can discuss an issue that's happening. If you can't discuss an issue that's happening, then you never get to the point where you can actually do anything about it. And it's easy to get preconceptions of what America's like, what Americans are like, and the same for us over there. We all read the news, we hear what happens in the media, what is China like, what is and so to have this allows us to sort of break that firewall. And so no matter what's going on with Trump, or what they say in the media, or how people may think of Americans and the perfect, now you have your own experience. You're like, well, we met some Americans. They came here and they did a play. And so I have my own idea of what Americans might be like and what America might be like, aside from hearing about Trump and hearing about global political corporate agendas. You know, maybe now I can maybe have my own opinion. And the same for us, you know, whenever we hear about what's happening in the world, now we get to come and have this conversation with you guys, and especially meet all the young people across China, and be like, and you know, feel hopeful about, you know, what some of the solutions we can all come up with together.
If
fact, we didn't ask many specific questions about the play, but we get the general idea of the insinuation beyond the play, such as about the diversity problem, about our will in our daily life toward other groups, that really inspire me to reconsider my idea when I meet strangers in my later life. So it really gave me many inspiration in the activity.
What I originally expected from the seminar is to gain some insight about the play, but what I actually gained from this kind of discussion is more than what I expected. I gained a lot of insight about the diversity, racial diversity in America, and a lot of very philosophical, deep questions about the racial problem in America, which is things that I really appreciate to gain from this experience.
Okay, so you got a little touch there, a lot of things, of the play itself, of these wonderful actors, and of some of the emotions that you elicited. So you all have everybody's bio in front of you, but do you each want to take 1 minute?
Absolutely not.
Fine. Then, is there anything else you want to say before we go to questions?
I think straight to questions.
Okay, so you've got your name tags in front of you, but just so that everybody knows who you are, tell us, Kathy, who you are.
Yes, Kathy Barbash, Barbash Arts Consulting. I've known Alice since 2005.
At university.
We first worked together at the Kennedy Center Festival of China. So it was interesting that one of the young women talked about, thinking differently about Japanese or Koreans. Was there any self-awareness that of their own Muslim issue of how they treat Uyghurs and Hui? Did that come up at all?
Yeah, there was a bit of methinks the lady doth protest too much, actually. Like, we don't have that problem here. We really don't. Don't look over here, but we don't have that problem. And once you got to know people a little more, we got to know some students in Xi'an who, over dinner, over talking, we sort of got a little more frank insight about it. And like, yeah, it is a thing. Yeah, we're not encouraged to talk about it, but the narrative is that we don't have racism in China.
There was no opportunity for any Uyghur or Hui students to attend that you know of? Where they didn't self-identify?
They didn't self-identify. Right. I mean, Hui probably. Uyghur, not that we noticed, and nobody self-identified per se. I think, as we know, in terms of in public forums, and especially when they knew there was filming, I think there was less likelihood to immediately address it. Some conversations happened afterwards when people came up to us, after the show ended. Then we still stood up there, and students would come up and have conversations. And one that I just shared with Jan was a very sweet young couple came up after the performance in Nanjing University to Tim and myself, and they'd gone outside and pulled some flowers from the yard and said, we wanted to bring these to you because we're from Xinjiang. And they were Han Chinese, which is the majority, and they said, we've had Uyghur classmates and friends growing up, but we never talked about anything because they would get too upset, and I just figured it's better not to ever address it. And I see from this play, you just have to have those hard conversations. And thank you for that. And we wanted to give this
Does
to you.
anyone remember? I think it was the one where we did 2 performances.
In
Nanjing, yeah. And one of them, the second night, someone did try to say something at the talkback and got shouted down by the rest of the audience.
For real?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, people would sometimes even. It was interesting whenever it kind of went to the edge of somebody, because even one of the students, I'm blanking on his name right now, I can see his little face. Jackie. When he talked about being just from the South and how he was treated differently just even from that. Right. There would always be, whenever somebody approached that line, there would be these titters, and sometimes it would be in Chinese, so we would be like, okay, what's happening, we know something, and there would be this rumble, this nervous kind of, so that was really interesting.
But it did sometimes get to, but there was a delicacy around it.
I'm curious how
introduce
much.
yourself.
I'm Qingdao, Gao Qing. I'm in the same cohort with Alison in the Public Intellectual Fellows Program, PIP. So very happy to see you all here. This is fascinating. My question is about any discussions about religion, because in the play it's very interlinked with race, diversity issues, right? Did the students, the groups you talked to, specifically address religion issues?
A lot of times they would ask if there was any Muslims in the cast and how we felt about it, and whether this play, what this means about Muslims. And I remember distinctly someone, I don't know, is this a spoiler free? Has everyone read the play? Can I? There's a moment where the lead character gets physical with his wife, and this was at the embassy. One of the talkback questions was like, well, I don't like that, Muslim, that's in Islam. And I was like, let me ask you a question, was my response. Are Muslims the only people who beat their wives? Are there no Chinese nationals who beat their wives? Are there no Christians who beat their wives? And that sort of sobered everyone up to what was happening. And I think, I don't really know how to talk about it yet, even, because it's still pretty fresh for me, but I felt personally like things were very encouraged to be binary in China. It's either this or that. It's either yes or no. It's either this character or that character. It's this tone or that tone. There's no, middle, or maybe it's this or maybe it's that. And there was a lot of pushback on that in a way. Like they were just, well, what's the answer? What's the moral? What's the thing did we do it right? You heard them on the thing. We don't have as much experience, so we might not have gotten it right, but did we get an A? That's kind of...
Yeah.
I kept trying to push the idea, the idea that there is no answer. The play doesn't leave you with answers. The fact that you don't know what the answer is good, because that means we've done some of that thing that leaves you a little uncomfortable and messy, and they don't like that, I think. And I think what they're used to in their education and entertainment is product, maybe, that has a moral.
Morals.
A message.
Moral.
What's the point? What is it supposed to do? And Disgraced leaves you just, sorry, you're on your own. Figure it out. I don't know how.
But what was interesting to me, you're absolutely right, and over and over and over again we encountered that, wanting to know the right answer. And what's interesting to me is it's not that those people don't exist here in this country. It's just not who I interact with. So it was fascinating that they're just so open about it. They can't help it. That's this, here I find people try to dodge that and get around. Like, it was just so interesting to be just, okay, well, what is this? Is it this or this? I saw this, and then what do you think? What is it? What is it really? And so that was just, that it was so open, and we could say, well, it's actually a little bit of that and a little bit of that, and it's, that was an interesting thing to come up against. It was hard after a certain point to keep coming up against it.
and there is that here in the States. I've
Absolutely.
experienced it in American talkbacks, but it was surprising to me how consistent it always went to that.
Absolutely.
But I think where I felt success in that is when we actually did workshops and interacted beyond the play. The question would also come, I'd like to understand emotions. How do I feel? And I thought, well, and then it's important to not come off as I'm not trying to avoid addressing it. But we have to kind of approach this in a different way. And once that message got through, the lights that went off, the interest, the self-interest, when there was a complicated feelings could exist in the same person and still get things communicated and still have experiences and get multidimensional. That awakening, to be on the receiving end of that over and over again, balanced the other for me. I didn't get too frustrated about the right or the wrong thing.
And to piggyback off of that, it was really interesting in the way that a lot of times the performances we got out of the most introverted students were the richest. And I don't know what it is about that, but maybe it's the idea that they felt like they could express themselves. And once they figured out, like Tim was saying, oh, wait, there's no wrong answer? They were really freed up by that, and it made me kind of, it made me, it evoked some interest in me, about how differently we do things.
If I may add briefly, I teach social work at Columbia University, and we have an increasing body of Chinese students joining our student body. And for anyone, any social work student, race, diversity, oppression, religion, these are very difficult. But as a Chinese professor, coming from China, teaching our Chinese students, these are complicated, very challenging questions for anyone. We at our school has a group called Social Work at Arts Caucus. So students use arts to pursue, explore these issues. And this is just so perfect. Thank you.
Can you, hi, I'm Ellen Dennis. I'm an independent producer working internationally, but never in China. And can you just say something about the construct of the work that you did? So you performed for the groups and you did workshops and then they performed for you?
Yeah, that was a little confusing.
It was a bit of all of it. We performed at several venues, and there was always a formal talkback with the audience after that. There were some places we went, it was prearranged either the day before or the day of or the day after we would conduct workshops, and there were specific asks in terms of what they wanted to focus on that we never prepared for. It was the miscommunication. It was talk about having to work on your feet and just figure it out. And what a great group I was traveling with. So we always had an experience, and it was important that it was important to us that the students, the participants, had an experience, and we would go with their flow. So we didn't do workshops at every venue, but and sometimes we did workshops and no performance. No, that was
I think a couple times.
I think there was always a performance.
How long were you together? And did you all know each other beforehand? And what was the interaction? How did that change over?
Actually, I had met Rachel and Ivy and Timothy and Samip on this project, and Ariel and I have known each other through the New York circuit, but we've never worked together. And that was kind of great to actually finally get to do that and to meet these wonderful people. And it was a great team, and we were really kind of well equipped to do that. Who knew you had teachers and performers and
So did you pick people specifically?
Well,
I'll
contextualize. So I think when I've known Alison since November.
Tell us about
and to have been through what we've been through since that time, that is,
like 100 years.
So in November, I get a call about wanting to bring, she'd seen my production, and she wanted to bring a distilled version, meaning a stage reading. So fully done, except without costumes, lights, scenery, so we could travel fast and loose, but other than that, it was the whole shebang. So the goal was to pick up the arena production, but only 2 of the actors were available. So then I had to find the other actors to bring together. So this was a real Frankenstein job of putting the show together. Now, and we had some who had done the show before. Some,
you just called me a Frankenstein monster.
Hey, do you want me to tell a story? Do you want me to get into it? Okay. So, but I say it this way for this reason, because it was remarkable. We had some, Fajer had done 2 other productions of the play with other directors. And I'd never worked with him before. I worked with Rachel many, many times, but she's never done the play before. And we had varying degrees of that. So to bring a group together, 1 week of rehearsal.
A month ahead of
a month off.
In a room like down the street, basically.
Go to China, and I'm like, hey, we have a 4-hour rehearsal. Let's see. And I'm telling you, these. I do, but then you did that first performance, and there's so many stories. But anyway, it was a remarkable journey for all of us, for me as a director. But they did it from the first performance. There was nothing shortchanged about it. They got our production of Disgraced, and I never watch every performance of anything I direct, and I had to. It was my privilege. To watch each one. Anyway, so there are many offshoot stories. So that's we all arrived. We had a few hours, and then it was go. And they didn't know. I mean, I didn't know if we had other formal teachers in the group. Of course, innately, we're all teachers in the arts, but. And then that confronted, so we had an expectation that there would be a certain amount of preparation on the students' part, and we thought, okay, well, let's see what they got, and then we'll plug in. Nothing. Just you know. And does anyone speaking? So we just jumped in.
But you had sent them the play beforehand to tell them.
Yeah. So I was going to say the documentary I think gives an unfair imbalance to how much English was actually spoken, because the film editor chose mainly the English clips for that sake, but actually most of the audiences and students were non-English speakers at all. Any of us who've worked in China know how it goes, where you do all the prep work, everyone's agreed. We had a gorgeous translator of the script, a woman you found, Tian Tian, whose background is in Western literature, theater, and so we had this gorgeous translation, and the best laid plans of Mice and Men was that every single student would have read the play in advance, discussed it in their classroom. You know, we even identified some teachers and professors to have gone in and discussed it with them in advance of our arrival. Yes, that's happened, of course, yes. And, you know, and some of our partners we'd worked with before, so we knew to what degree yes meant yes, and others were new partners for it with us, and so we showed up, and my favorite was Xi'an, where the professors look us in the eye and say, oh, they all saw the play last night, they've all read it, they've all rehearsed the scenes, and we walk into the room and I say, 多少人昨天看完演出? How many people saw the show last night?
3.
I think like maybe 2. Yeah, nobody had seen it, nobody had read it, nobody had prepared, and the teachers had this agenda that they had to perform it for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
To check some box. So that was, but I do have to say, and I've said this about the cast before, and they made fun of me, this production made me believe in meant to be, because it was the number of things, as we all know, that can go wrong. Different things did, but none of the things you think are going to go wrong. So that phone call to Timothy back whenever that was, to then getting the pieces together, it's always a Sudoku puzzle, to having the funding all fall into place with Luce and the embassy and the partners, to then calling Timothy back and saying, actually, it is happening. Do we have a cast? To then...
Oh, you want a cast?
And I was telling Jay, at a time when the new NGO law is coming into effect, when universities are increasingly, quote unquote, you know, pushing out Western thought, we easily could have had a 3-month tour. We tacked on 2 extra weeks and then we canceled it at the end. But at one point I was talking to you guys about, do you want to add an extra week here or there? Because there was so much interest, not a single one canceled, not a single one dropped out. There were 0 bufangbians. Everything happened.
Why? It seems so impossible to me. Why did they let you do this from the beginning? I mean, with the problems they have with Xinjiang and different, I mean, I'm just really amazed.
Well,
Did they see it?
I don't think
they had credits. They
I
didn't
don't
know.
think the net is that tight.
Exactly.
I don't think they
Somebody
have,
kept saying, yes, I
yeah,
read it.
we
Yes,
read
oh,
it,
yeah, we read it.
It's like that worked in our favor in a way, and they were like, oh, wait, this is...
American problems and not here.
I think it's a mix.
Yeah,
I think
that happened too. That,
I also think the ones that didn't want it told us in advance. Because there were people who said, it's not going to work, we're probably not, you know, they said, oh, call this office, call that office. There were a couple that were in the works that we got passed around and then it didn't happen. So the ones that wanted it really wanted it. And
But I think they do probably see that these are America's problems.
well, I think they want to try to rationalize it that way, but something in them when they see the show...
Sure, but the ones who helped you to improve in different places were able to say that anyway. Well, this is America's problems.
Well,
the
you
ones
know,
who understood and wanted to
I gotta say, that's kind of the beauty of plays, is when you read it on the page, it can be like, oh, that's this, this, and this. And especially in what appears to me a culture that's very much about what are the themes, what are this and this and this. But then the beauty of plays is when you have actual human beings embodying them and bringing them to life, then you realize, whoa, this is now we have actual real life people with complex problems up in front of us. And this is about human beings, not about America over there. Put them there.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no.
I will say that something about the method of what we did was also kind of fascinating to everyone, and they just were kind of struck by that. I think they're used to more spectacle and more lights and sound and smoke machines and like lasers. And we show up in just our costumes. I come out in my boxers, first thing you see, and then and we're just behavior. That's what we give them, and I think they responded to that, and I felt like they did.
I'm sure they loved it. I think it's fantastic. I'm not saying that. I'm sure they loved it and were fascinated.
But
and
you're
confused. I'm saying
amazed that it got
having
to that
been
point.
sort of an administrative
Mm.
background where everything was so difficult. I mean, really
Oh,
easy
it's
things.
Kafkaesque.
I'm not surprised that once it got there, it was well received. I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it would slip by.
But weren't we supposed to have people in the room that first day and they canceled?
Yeah, we were supposed to have a rehearsal
Oh, yeah,
Oh, but that wasn't a permit thing. That was they were just gonna tour people through to show off that they had foreign actors.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
And I'm even more fascinated that you not only could do this, but that you could do it in high schools. Whose idea was
Oh,
it
they
to
were
take it
great.
to a high school?
Yeah, well, they were
Great.
Whoever was writing the brief. You?
Actually, yeah.
You have these relationships, right?
It's always one or two or a group of really young teachers who realize this is necessary.
Mm.
And actually, to bring it to the schools, we planned for, I don't know, from beginning of 2000, from beginning when I know we want to do this project, I started talking to the middle school, and they figure out their budget. And actually, the translator also teaches at that school, and the dean is really supportive, and they included the play, reading the play in their curriculum.
Mm.
And
They
all of
actually
their
did.
students, they actually did,
Yeah.
and their 12th grade students rehearsed it, so they also saw the production of how they did it.
I guess, yeah, I would say that it's the same thing that we're talking about in the play. There is no one group of people in China who feel the same way about everything, right? There are plenty of people who are supportive.
And I have to say that's a testament to exactly as you say, every place that wanted it had an advocate. And I think it's a testament to younger generations that an incredible degree of openness, and it's not monolithic, and the fact that, you know, that it was successful is a testament to where a lot of China is today and the conversations people want to have.
So I'm John Lowett from the National Committee. So two short questions. One is, so Nanjing and Xi'an, where else did you take the play? And the other question is for the people other than the Pong Production team. Had you guys ever been to China before, and what did you do to prep for China as opposed to for the play?
Nothing.
We went to Shanghai, Beijing, Xi'an, Nanjing, and then Shangtan, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So
Outside Changsha.
yes, yes, in the Hunan province, and
What did you prep? You got a mask. You got a good mask.
I got a
You
mask.
got a good mask.
That's about. And then I, read a little bit, and then I was like, what could I don't know how I can possibly prepare for this.
I
was
watched
just like-
part of a YouTube video to try it, but like a lot of it is just like was not even making any sense to me on that. It wasn't even until I got there that I was like, wait, what is breakfast?
We kept saying, are we really going to China? We kept like touching base before, like, is this really
No, I didn't have time to, still my mind is not wrapped around it, so I could not prepare, and I started to do some investigating, and I thought,
We sent you welcome packets.
Yes.
we sent you briefing kits.
Yeah. But it was so overwhelming. You just have to gut it. It's just one of those life adventures, and you just got to show up, and just whatever happens, happens. And it was glorious.
I guess part of my question is also, let's say, as a director, did you make different directorial decisions as you understood the Chinese audience, or as actors? So this would have been the same on any stage in the world, or at least on a U.S. stage, on a Chinese stage.
I was a total tag-along for this. I mean, it's rare the director ever gets to, hang out for the whole run. They send me home opening night. This group, and I can't praise enough the just all in, and the talent and the generosity of what they gave to their performances. I was just proud of that. I would put that anywhere. And actually, there was nothing to be done once. Within 2 performances, I don't think I said another word. And I learned so much just on that level. I mean, I could talk just about what I learned about work as a director outside of my comfort zone with this play in particular.
I mean, for us, every night was different, because also that's just kind of how a lot of us work in a jazz aesthetic of like, well, what is the other person doing? Okay, I'm listening. What are you doing? And so, yes, it was going to be different based on what each audience is going to do. But having said that, we always did our play. We always made more or less the same choices. But
can you guys talk about performing, to
Oh,
an
no.
audience, which ones were watching surtitles and what?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say,
Yeah.
just specifically to your point, no, we did not modify anything culturally. We did not shy away from anything that was on that page. We did not shy away. I feel like if we were here, it would have been, I mean, there would have been like a little bit of modulation because the American audiences understood more. Like when we were at the embassy in Beijing, they were laughing. So then obviously that energy does something to you.
Helps, yeah.
But we never shied. We didn't play it any differently when there were mainly Americans in the audience at one time versus when it was high school kids.
Yeah. And what
We
is
didn't shy away.
surprising is what each audience reacts to, but it's also always, on the underpinning, the skeleton is still, we try to remain faithful to it, but also what got reactions each night was compelling and interesting.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Allison, what were you?
That was it. Okay. About working with surtitles.
There was a feeling of like sometimes, I don't know if you had this feeling, but I had a feeling where like you'd do a bit and then the reaction would come like 3.5 seconds later.
Yeah, a little delayed.
Because they're reading the subtitles.
Yeah, or surtitles.
Surtitles.
Yeah. And a lot of times,
Does that throw you off?
No, it becomes kind of part of the rhythm of the thing that you're doing, but it's a little different, I'll say that, than when Beijing High School, where most people spoke English, or Shanghai Girls' School, where most people spoke English, or the embassy, those felt more like closer to live theater feedback loop kind of thing.
First of all, I was really interested to hear the
Introduce
explanation
yourself,
of how the
Michelle.
students. Sorry.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Michelle Vosper, and I was on the Asian Cultural Council, talking about the yes, no, what's the message, right and wrong. I think that is because it's high school students too. I think when that changes.
So, but they didn't only do high school.
We did universities as well.
Okay, sorry to hear that.
In fact, I think it was more of an urban country thing, honestly.
Well,
It
just
seemed
go
to
to
be.
law school in the United States.
It might be because we as theater, wackadoo, woo-woo hippie artists don't encounter those kinds of ideologies as much, but
Right,
I'm sure.
among students,
Yeah.
your own students.
Yeah.
But my question was actually, I think, because I've traveled in China with artists on many occasions, and I think it's very interesting that often when the trip begins, especially if it's the first trip to China, my sense is that artists have sense themselves as really individualistic with their own very unique identity and different ways of thinking, and sometimes it doesn't work that well. But so congratulations that you're such a cooperative group. But more interesting, I think I've found when traveling with artists, at first there's a little bit of a checking out and making it clear that you have your own opinion about things. And as time goes on in China, this is American actors, American artists. They begin to realize how much they have in common with one another in the context of a place where the culture is so different. And they find out a lot about themselves in contrast to that. So I'm just curious, what were the things, because you all come from different backgrounds, that you found out that you all suddenly had in common that was very different in China? Did you have
Well,
did you
nobody
discuss
liked
that
bull
at all?
stomach. Nobody enjoyed the bull stomach. I think we can all agree on that. I think I've never been as close to a company I've traveled with. I mean, when you travel with a company, there is that closeness that happens, and like your kids at camp all of a sudden, and I think that feeling is shared by everyone. I really love that. It was also like we didn't know what we were getting into. Every time you'd show up and there'd be like a giant projection screen or a wood panel floor or carpeting or like no tables or it was really like you show up with your props and your stuff, and like Thespis, you get up and you do the thing and then you pack it up and you put it on your back and you go to the next place. So it all had that spirit and that feeling, and I think that's the saving grace that allowed us to address what you're talking about being individualists.
So So Timothy, I've worked with him many times, as he mentioned. He has a gift for bringing together a really amazing people. not just artists, but people. So even though we were all extremely strong human beings, like character, like our personalities were so specifically strong and different, we are as human beings, we're respectful, we're appreciative, you know what I mean, we're collaborative. So that is what I know from working with this man, that he brings those type of people together. And one thing that I noticed, because we all remained very distinct people throughout the whole time, but one thing
Especially
I noticed,
at mealtime.
but one thing I noticed that was really, really powerful to me was, as Americans, the privilege we have to criticize, to speak openly about how we feel about our country, what we want to see, what we don't like, and where we want it to be, and to say it without shame, without fear. That hit me so hard. I'm getting a little emotional, but I had never experienced that before. I'd never been to Asia before, but that was incredible. I remember when I felt it, I was like, because somebody actually was like, asked a question, I cannot remember the question, but they were talking about how, something about our respect for our country and being able to say the things that we say, and I thought, I was like, yeah, it is because we want it to be better, and God, what a privilege it is, and how come I've never realized that I have that privilege, and so many people all over don't. That was a very powerful moment for me, and that we all have in common. We are so strong, and that Americanness in each, and even though Fajer is technically Canadian, I think, but
y'all
he's got that fierce, that fierce American spirit, and that is so opinionated and declarative, and and that was really great to see, but also we all had that in our own unique way. We all had slightly different perspectives, but we all had that. And it was just overwhelming to recognize that privilege.
I thought that was a nice part of your documentary, and must have been a nice part of your experience too, that one of the actors who's not here today articulated that. We saw him articulate it twice on screen about our rights, and to name our rights. And
No,
I
that
found
was me.
that was very that was very moving. I
That
think
was
it
me.
was twice. Was you?
It was me. I was
Fajer's voice.
Oh, really?
Put that a caption.
That's good acting.
Don't give Ariel credit for that.
That was me.
That was good to see it, really. And
Yeah, and honestly, it felt like they wanted us to answer to that sometimes, and I
Yeah.
was like, well, yeah, it's not perfect, and a lot of times it came back to the travel ban, which, by the way, I didn't know if it was going to affect me when we were doing this, but and a lot of times it was like, well, how did Trump happen if this is the thing? And we didn't have an answer, but we said, but we're asking the question, and we're allowed to ask the question, and I think that was, like you said, evocative.
Dan?
My name is Steven. I grew up in Shanghai. I was the company manager for Chinese American Artists Chamber.
A little louder, Stephen.
I didn't recognize with your haircut.
I'm interested in your work with the students in the workshop setting. What were some of the things that surprised you in terms of like getting certain themes or certain ideas across? And then you guys talked a little bit about this already, like the right and wrong answer. Like, what were moments of disjuncture that like kept coming across?
I'll start. One of my favorite exercises that we wound up doing was one that was nonverbal.
Nonverbal.
Yeah. And anytime something like that happened, I don't know, I think it was an easier wall to crack or a softer target, or I don't know how to talk about it, but it was somehow less something they could look up the answer to, or less something they could like find on the internet. If it was just like, oh, I have to do a thing now, all right, well, what is, and then you ask the questions after and make the connections, or have them make the connections. I think that's where I felt that system falling, that like binary thing kind of start to go, well, okay, maybe there's some room. I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about it.
Physicality.
Yeah.
And I think you made the great point about the here. What is that thing
Oh,
you
yeah.
said? The here up and then the here down. What was the?
I don't know if I want this on camera. Dance students in China are trained to be empty from here up, and theater students are trained to be empty from here down.
So there was, and we're, I mean, and not all, certainly all American actors are different, but we are just a very embodied, physical, like, all of it. You use it, all of it.
Yeah.
And so that was a really interesting thing to encounter, because we just go in and we're like, yeah, just all in, body, mind, and spirit. And then to, you know, have it was all about this. Mm-hmm. And that was a very interesting thing to get across. Oh, and also the sense of personal space and males, females, and just like a touch was like rippling through the universe. That was kind of amazing. So yeah.
So that interaction you did on screen with the bond, what was it that you were all in your circle? And
Yeah, some of the exercises.
Did you do that with all the students and get them involved?
We did
that way?
various
places.
different exercises.
We really learned continually. Just go. No expectation. Just go. We'll get the temperature and we'll just go.
It's also
we got really good at feeling each other out, not being so structured going in.
Well, we didn't know who spoke English, if they spoke English, if they read the play, even if they told us they did. Or so we always kind of had to keep the shoulders loose, go in, just bob and weave and see what happens, and I think everyone rose to that challenge.
Were there any things you tried to do that the teachers or the officials said no? I mean, once you got to a school?
It was sort of it was the opposite, actually. In one of the schools, they really wanted their students to perform the play, and the students had done zero preparation. And that was one of those bizarre moments where clearly something had come down from the top that the students had to perform. And it was even this whole thing that they were going to perform it 3 different groups in the morning. You were going to pick the best one, and they were going to then perform it in the afternoon for like the whole officials. And the kids didn't speak English, hadn't read the play, hadn't prepared, had no clue what was going on. It was excruciating. So we finally just said, we're not doing this. And the God bless her, the girl was trying to say no, but you have to. It was like, we are not doing this.
But we're trying to do something.
We will do
the
something
students were there. They
else.
wanted to work. We were ready to engage the
Q&A
students,
session.
and she just kept coming in and trying to get us
like,
to
no, but
go
you have
back.
to.
That was weirdly political. That kind of stuff. We didn't know how to engage that. I think that was also, there was a language barrier, and it was coming at us filtered. Thank you for doing that. But also, wow. But do you remember what happened instead that day?
A couple different things.
Yeah, we wound up teaching them stage combat, and they loved it.
It was fantastic.
They went nuts with just like a few things that we just showed them. We, did some dance, they were open to that. They were hungry for it, I think.
I think we were able to do that because Alison finally just cornered the woman and kept
But the same thing happened in the classes and the workshops we taught. I
Yeah.
remember we did it that morning at the same school, and a teacher who was supposed to be in charge of this class kept jumping into our lesson and reading excerpts from the internet about what we were talking
What
about.
we were actually doing.
Let them
What we were
have a direct
actually doing in the room.
experience. Don't tell them what to experience. And I don't even know if that was communicated. But that was some of the frustrations about it. But it was also like incredible to see the students want to kind of break past it and there is some ADD in China. I don't know if y'all know, but
one of the most moving things, the flip side of that, the Shanghai Girls' School.
Oh yeah.
Where that faculty could they kept pushing us to the students. They anything we wanted to give, there was no resistance, and we were surprised that, we felt we were talking about, some sophisticated. We've gotten to a line where we never passed before, and this was a high school, so we were a little cautious. Teachers, whatever we wanted to talk about, they wanted us
And
to
all
engage
girls.
these girls.
Yes.
Yeah. It was yes.
It was great.
Yes.
Excuse me, is that a private school?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, Shanghai
That was number
Shanghai
3.
It's not
Number
private.
3. It's not
It's not
private.
private. Shanghai number 3.
That's actually public school.
Public school, but all girls only?
Oh, girls.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
The only
the
one.
only girls' school.
Okay, we've got 3 groups. First, Helena, then you.
That follows up on this.
Okay, go ahead.
It related to the language. I'm Margot Landgren, National Committee. Did you find that there was a different response depending on whether people in the audience understood the English or were following the subtitles?
No, there's no real consensual response to this play, so I don't know. I don't feel like even if you had people who understood exactly the same words, you're going to see something else. You're going to see you're going to have a different experience based on who you are. It's what I would often say at the talkbacks, that it's, it shows you who you are. It plays issues. So I don't know how to answer that. But there was a feeling that they were like a little bit behind it, or that it was like, is anyone out there when you were doing the surtitles? But they were just.
But in all of the talkbacks, even the ones that were being translated, by the time the question was translated to us, it felt like they had seen the same show that everyone else had seen.
Okay, now we've got 3 people here, questions, 1, 2, and then 3.
Judy had it back there.
And then Judy.
No,
But first, wait, no.
question was asked by Jonathan. I was curious about where you went, and but I do have one little question about where you're. Okay.
Okay. Helena first.
Hi. Sorry, Helena Colenda with the Luz Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just interested, you've talked about it a little bit in your comments already, but how this experience may have changed your perceptions of China from what you read in the press, from your preconceived notions, what you brought back in terms of thinking about that country.
It's a big question. It's a big country, but and this is somewhat related to a question I was asked earlier that I didn't say. That I had the blessing of traveling to a lot of places, and I thought, well, going to China, I anticipate being stared at. And what was remarkable to me is that did not happen at the level that I prepared, nor did I ever feel I was on the receiving end of a wonder that I am in most places in this country when I travel, when there are not other black people around. And so it wasn't me having to wait to find where I found commonality between Chinese people. I was allowed to just be me, the non-plus nature of me being there. I think Nanjing I got a little action, but mostly, I was just able to be, and it's just odd to feel more comfortable in a country where I don't speak the language, where it's so culturally different. Now, of course, we were well taken care of in traveling with translators, so I had that safety feeling. But I ventured out as well, and just the openness I certainly didn't expect. I confess my ignorance about Chinese history, and both contemporary and older. But that was the most remarkable thing, and I'm just beginning to talk about that.
Yeah, there is so much that has just sort of blown my mind from this trip about myself and about China and about, I think I maybe exotified China before or thought about it in certainly not as fully realized way and not as nuanced as I saw, that there's so much there. And what did someone say, 47 different ethnic
55
50 something
57
56 right?
56 different ethnic denominations and all the complexities of Hong Kong and Taiwan and the mainland, and just like once you start talking to people and part of me was amazed that we were ever actually even able to have a conversation because of how much difference there was in the basics of everything. But you found stuff. What are we eating? What are we doing later? What that we connected about, and I think that was impressive to me.
So much.
Yeah, it's really.
I already shared some of it, but it was invaluable, the time spent with the students and with some of the professors, and just being able to really talk to people and just have conversations. That's my favorite part of traveling. I'd never been to Asia before, but anywhere I go, I just like to get off and wander around and watch people and talk to people and see what life is like there. And I had no expectations. I had no ideas what to expect. And anytime my brain tried to wrap itself around that, I would stop it, because I was like, that's not even going to make any sense. Whatever I try to do, it's not even going to make any sense. So just go and see what this is. And I think, again, it just reinforced on the most basic level, because there's so many things, but on the most basic level, it reinforced things in me that I already felt, and that about the oneness of humanity, about the complexities of human beings, and how no matter where you go, we are all complex. The complexities may have different shades, but so that's how I feel as a person and as an artist, and I try my best to live my life that way. So to go someplace and to really literally on the other side of the world, and to encounter that, you're like, yes, the people are just as, yes. Yes, there is no one type of person. There is no like the Chinese, like you know what I mean, and that to me is beautiful and invaluable.
So I'm curious
Can you
about.
introduce yourself, please?
Barbara Adrian, Marymount Manhattan College, and I'm curious about, you went into high schools and you went into universities,
Yes.
and I'm curious about what the balance between that was and what adjustments you might have needed to make or did you make between working with high school students in China and working with university students in China. The question's motivated because I don't know how students get to go to university in China. Is it the same here where anyone can apply, or are they selected?
That stuff is rigorous.
Way
Let me tell you.
You gotta be a 4.6.
I mean, talking to them, I was shocked. I mean, no, I don't think it's the same at all.
So that's what's motivating my question as to what adjustments you might have made.
Well, I
or
didn't
made, or what you felt the difference was.
We didn't make any. The only thing I noticed is maybe there was a little more tittering about the romantic stuff in high school settings.
Yeah.
Ooh, girlfriend, boyfriend, honey.
That
they
was
said
the main
honey.
thing.
Yeah. That was it. But I also actually found the high school students to be more mature in a lot of ways. But I think that was
more
because
mature than the university
students where we went. But I think that's because of where we went to the high schools. We went to high school in Beijing.
What was that?
And
The
Shanghai.
Beijing International, the first?
Beijing International School, number four.
Number 4, that's the top.
And Shanghai School, number 3 is also the top.
Because I was like, oh, we're going to a high school, okay. When they started asking questions, I was like, oh, okay.
And then,
all right, I was like,
pay attention
okay,
now.
wow,
and then
we're
the Shanghai
just.
American School was just almost like being at a theater campus somewhere in the States. So it was not. It didn't fit in a neat box like that. I think it was more country mouse, city mouse, honestly, if I'm being honest, than university, high school.
Versus high school.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Story Ayers. I'm an actress here in the city. I've worked with Timothy Douglas before, and I followed him on Facebook while he was what looked like to me frolicking. And I would keep asking myself, what is he doing? What is he doing? And so I'm really excited to be here and learn what you were actually doing.
And she wants to go next time.
Incredible. And I'm also, I'm really taken aback. I have done similar work like this in Australia and Scotland and South Africa and in England. And one of the things that I found after our production when we were working with students in workshops was in some countries, in some cities, there was no one anything like you're saying, but in some places, the play that we were doing also dealt a lot with race, and it dealt a lot with race. And in some places, the students were shocked to learn about things here in America. And so when they saw the play, they were like, the responses of, I didn't know this was happening there, which surprised us as a cast. And I was wondering if that happened anywhere, if people learned anything from the students or any of the teachers or anyone learned anything from Disgraced that they didn't know about America, or learned anything from you all in your experience that they weren't aware of. Does that?
Yes. I don't know how to get deeper about that, but certainly they're across the board. Many times people had a preconception about Muslims, Americans, New Yorkers, lawyers, you name it, and they were like, well, how can he be experiencing racism if he's rich? You can see he's rich, that kind of thing, right? But we were kind of blowing their minds in that way. But I can't point to a particular theme or a thread, or I don't know if you guys can.
My feeling I walk away from it, almost all of the encounters, I never felt put in a position to defend anything about America, to defend the play, that the questions were genuine questions and often had with it an immediate applying to something in their lives or something that's happening in China that they could sort of relate it to. Is it like that? So that was remarkable because an American audience talkbacks of this play constantly feeling I have to defend the play and defend America. And that was remarkable to me, and I learned that much more about the play.
Okay, Judy, you had a question, and then you, and then Gao, then we've reached the bewitching, we're 2 minutes past the bewitching marvelous point. And if anybody has to go, we would understand, so please feel free if you need to leave.
So how long was
Judy, introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Judy Killichan. I'm a consultant who had a long history with an organization here in New York called the Asia Society. So well-versed in Asia and somewhat versed in China.
And dance, too.
And dance. I'm the vice chair of a nonprofit called Battery Dance Company. So all of your experiences with the nonverbal activities that you did is pretty much very familiar to me because the company I'm with in terms of the nonprofit, they go to countries abroad, work with underprivileged children and young adults and bring them together. Israelis, Palestinians, West Germans, and refugees. It could be any place in any country, but they do this all over the world. So they bring these people together and different groups of Muslims, boys and girls who had never had any physical contact, but yet they ended up, after a week of education, they perform and they do a dance for a large public audience. So when I saw your documentary and I saw this, that's what it made me think of, what Battery Dance does overseas, and Alison knows the founder of Battery Dance very well. But my question was, you were a week in each city, or how long a period of time was this, and what happens now? What happens now with this play, with your individual experiences? Are you going to do this again, Alison, in other places in China? Are you doing it here in the U.S.?
Should we ask Helena?
So my question is actually a natural follow-up. I shared this with some friends, and one friend is in Canada, and she asked, is the group coming to Canada? Did they tour already? And I'm also curious, I mean, these immigrants, refugees, race, these are global issues.
Yes.
I'm curious whether you did this play in other countries. What were the reactions? And yes, indeed, if you plan to do this in other countries, or even again back in the United States.
I mean, the reactions doing it in the United States have been pretty varied and mixed bag. I did it in Pittsburgh and in Jupiter, Florida, and in China. So those are my experience. I maybe need a break from it, but I wouldn't be opposed to something else. But yeah, what was the question?
Where does it go next? So where it went, it was about a week.
How long a period of time?
It was a month-long tour. So they arrived on April 3rd and they left basically May 1st, April 30th. So 5 cities, 14 venues, or institutions in 4 weeks.
As little as 2 days in some, and as long as a week
in others. Yeah, it varied. In terms of what's next, it's a mix. We've had I think at the end we all needed to digest. As I said, there was enough interest to have done a 3-month-long tour, so some of those schools and universities have gotten back to us. A lot of people who saw the show were at professional venues and festivals and said, can we invite it back to the National Center for the Performing Arts is interested in Beijing, and a couple other places have reached out, Guangzhou. That we didn't go to Guangzhou, but they were traveling and saw it. So there are initial conversations, so stay tuned, watch this channel, watch this space. And then in terms of continued ping pong productions, yes, I mean, we're looking to our next Disgraced production. There are ping pong brochures on the counter. Please grab one on your way out. I forgot to have them on there on your way in. But yes, I mean, that's the next one. And hopefully Hong Kong.
Okay. Was there somebody that I said could ask a question?
Yeah, I just had
Yes.
one. Mary Fleischer from Marymount Manhattan College. I was wondering if you felt that theater existed in China or where you were going as a site for provocative thought. In other words, there was a sense of contemporary theater in what it was, or was this a new idea that contemporary plays could actually
Not the way
speak
that
to something
I
that was very
recognized it.
contemporary? And do you think an awareness was built that this is an opportunity that you can make an experience and connect it to contemporary?
I mean, they watch American television
provocations.
shows and TV and film, so there's that way in, and there's that connection to like what a scene is and what the character is,
Right.
and in that way there is. But I personally found the theatrical tradition to be very, very, very different and very foreign, and kind of there's really kind of very little intersectionality to it.
But we also didn't go to professional theater
Exactly.
academies. We went to academic institutions, so it didn't sort of.
But at Xi'an International, they are, with that center, they really are wanting to build that program in acting. And right now, the acting class they're currently teaching is American sitcom. That's sort of the pinnacle in training that they are able to relate to there. But there was a real fascination with the way that we were performing. The fascination with it. And there was one amazing conversation I had with a young woman who was so curious and didn't even know what or how to ask her questions, but hung in there. And I don't remember if you were translating or if it was.
Was this the woman that wanted to be a playwright?
No, this was again at Xi'an International, and she was asking certain questions, but she couldn't get past something. So finally, she said, and the way it was translated, she felt like the first half hour was really boring. But really, but what I finally came to understand is she liked when it got heated, and so when I was able to explain about exposition, how among other ways we structure plays in America is that we set it up so that the second half that you really love, and a light went off, that this concept of exposition had not, in terms of storytelling, had not occurred to her, and we had an amazing conversation about that. But we had to get past, because then she said, "I feel I've insulted you." She wouldn't ask any more questions, and I'm like, no, please keep asking. No, I'm not insulting you. Telling the truth. I love the truth. And it was remarkable.
Well, we went to see a production, a professional theater show in Xi'an.
That I think was trying.
And then the actors came to see our show. She fell asleep in the front row, y'all. I'm not even joking. I was like.
That was not the worst offense of the audience.
It was deeply funny to me. But what was fascinating, and I had Lynn, one of our amazing, just everything. She did everything for us. We would have been dead on the side of the road without her. So, I mean, she was phenomenal. She was. This really clicked things into place, because she was like, well, this style of theater, this is like my parents' style of theater. She was like, I wish I could have seen something in Shanghai, but I didn't have the opportunity. But so something that helped me get my mind around things there was that she said that the spoken word theater as we know it is only has a 100-year tradition in that country versus their thousands of years of existence. And when I started to think about that, I went, oh. It is this other thing that's put on from the colonizers. So I was like, that's wrapping my brain around that. I went, okay, because I was like, what's happening? There's a disconnect in how things are seen, and it just really kind of helped my brain shift around things and go, okay, this is not the what is it, the Beijing opera. Was like the historical, I guess. I have a lot to learn about theater there.
Hasn't been used as any kind of dissident thought at this point.
No.
So it's such a public.
Oh, it has?
But it is within
But it's
perhaps
sneaky,
a short,
right?
Well, even Beijing Opera has this dissident.
Ah.
But
Yeah.
it feels like it's trying to be stealth about it still, right? It's not. It doesn't.
What made me want to see
I don't know.
more? I really was
Yeah,
wanted
I
to
was gonna
see
say,
more
I know
theater
what I
to
there
that
to
extent,
really.
they were so busy performing and teaching that the next time you come, we'll
Yeah.
just have you watch. And then you'll see
But it was
kinds of
it was
things.
it was
Yeah.
fascinating. Like
there
that
was a
really,
lot there.
you know, I was deeply interested in. One of the things that was so exciting to me about the tour is to work with the students creatively and to learn about, you know, how they what the tradition of the theatrical traditions were there, how they approached things, what were their main styles, you know, like we have like a million different styles that we can do here, but I was very interested in that, and so that was something I couldn't quite, but yeah.
I was a little jealous of the uniformity of the vision of everyone kind of treating it. No, seriously, I mean, we do. We have 100. We have as many different methodologies for acting as there are actors in this country, and they almost all treat it like it's a musical score. Like, oh well, what do I do here? What's this? This thing here? What do I? This is the thing, right? And I'm, I don't figure it out. What you be a human? Like, and it's such an interesting conversation to keep having. I don't know what the answer is.
No, there is no answer. That's why I was
There is
like,
no-
I was interested I was so interested in like somehow fusing these traditional, like to go someplace and like to have a, you know, I would love to experience, like to take a class with somebody there and to like that is so interesting to me.
For the next tour,
Oh,
I
man.
think immersing you guys in the diversity of what's there as well. Because there are
American Theater Magazine.
Japanese.
Yeah.
Japanese.
American Theater Magazine, those of you that are interested in this particular topic, has some wonderful, just their latest edition, the latest one that's come out, discuss the difference between straight plays, musicals, how the talking plays are growing or not growing in China, and what the responses are.
Great.
So there's some really good. There must be like 3 or 4 essays in that particular issue that basically just American Theater Magazine. And so if you're interested in this particular topic of how they're responding culturally to that, it's a very interesting read for that.
Okay, with that recommendation for everybody to go home and read. Thank you all. Thank Rachel, Timothy, Allison. Thank you. Wonderful.